Most of the offseason discussion has been revolving around Fred VanVleet's departure to the Houston Rockets, potential trade scenarios involving OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam, and one guy that's not really been brought up amongst a lot of Toronto Raptors fans' conversations, since the season's really ended, has been Gary Trent Jr., who has picked up his player option going into next season, and it apparently has been in the lab over this summer, really working on his cardio conditioning, and is looking to really take a step forward going into next season. So we'll break down that whole situation for Gary Trent Jr., but the reports do continue on the potential transaction front as we have an update on a potential third team in a Pascal Siakam trade and just other general updates regarding the Toronto Raptors direction as this summer continues along. So lots of stuff to break down in this video. Without further ado, let's jump to the first topic of discussion. The first thing we're taking a look at is a major leap incoming for Gary Trent Jr. going into next year. Now, Gary Trent Jr. is a guy that has a lot of opportunity if the roster remains as currently constructed, because this could end up being a tougher year for Gary Trent Jr. if, as we broke down yesterday, the reported Tyler Hero trade ends up going down, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm assuming that's not going to go down until we hear something more official on that front, but Gary Trent Jr. with Fred VanVleet gone, the backcourt, sure, Dennis Schroeder's being brought into the mix. Scotty Barnes could be slide down to the PG spot. There should be a lot more opportunities for Gary to get some shots up, especially where Fred VanVleet was the highest volume three-point shooter on our team last season, and Gary Trent Jr. is going to probably fill that role, fill that void going into next year as our roster is currently constructed. Definitely guys like Grady Dick will be coming in and shooting some threes, definitely off the bench, but Gary's going to be in that starting unit around guys like Pascal, Scotty, Jakob Poeltl, and he's going to need to space that floor, and he's going to have a serious opportunity to grow his game, right? To have a role on this roster going into next season where he can blossom as a scorer. And apparently this summer, he has put in some serious work over the offseason because according to the Summer League announcers, they broke it down pretty purely. So just to give you the direct quote. So Gary's been working out with his dad, improving his conditioning especially. That was really brought out in that quote. And that's something that's pretty encouraging, pretty exciting, because we know Gary can get buckets. He can knock down threes. He's going to continue to work on. Everyone knows Gary's working on that mid-range jump shot, the three-point shot. He's a shooter. He's a bucket getter. We know what we're going to get from Gary on that front. I mean, last season, Gary was looking pretty solid along those lines. Like 17 points per game. 37%, that percentage can certainly increase, but 43% from the field. He can get buckets, but the rest of his game is sort of where we could see more development. And last summer, we heard a lot of chatter, a lot of talk about Gary potentially being the guy on the defensive end. He talked about wanting to be on the all-defensive team, potentially being a DPOY guy, and he definitely has his moments. Again, 1.6 steals per night. He's pretty fleet of foot, but he's not a guy that is regarded as an all defensive level player, even though he is certainly a good and strong upper class defender, but room to grow in that area, and him building up some strength, building up some conditioning, building up some speed along those lines, so he can guard players that are bigger, players that are smaller, because Gary, when he's playing guys around his size, around his speed, his quick hands, he's able to clamp them up, but he does struggle once, you throw him onto bigger defenders or smaller guys that can blow past him, right? So if he's improving those skills, he can be a huge asset in the Toronto Raptors defensive schemes, where I guess they're going to be different next season. The Raptors like to switch a lot of stuff under the Nick Nurse system. We'll see what ends up happening under Darko Rajakovic, as we haven't heard a lot about his defensive philosophies, but Gary Trent Jr., if he can up his game, establish himself as one of the upper echelon defenders, athletes in the NBA, then that paired along with his scoring, it's going to allow him to sort of slash the rim a bit better, maybe start dunking a little bit more, and then we're going to see a lot more complete Gary Trent Jr. I remember when he initially came to the Toronto Raptors, there were some comparisons to a Bradley Beal, some comparisons, those elite wing guys in the NBA. He didn't take that leap over his first couple seasons with the Toronto Raptors, maybe under a new coach, a really focused offseason, taking 2 workouts a week, one for fitness and one for obviously skill development, all that sort of stuff. That is very encouraging if you're a Toronto Raptors fan, and hopefully we extend him. And this is something I said immediately when Chris Haynes came out on day 1 of free agency and said he's getting extension. I said that's great news, because Gary Trent Jr. could potentially be taking a leap. So to lock him in after sort of a down year, sure, it might be a risk, but I think it's a risk worth taking, because he's not going to be a guy that's an untradeable contract. I think you want to lock in Gary Trent Jr. for the long term, because he fits exactly what the Toronto Raptors need. He has the right approach, even though he's a bit of an up and down player in terms of consistency. He always has a good attitude. He always seems to just be ready to ready to play his role, whether he does it effectively, because off the bench he has really struggled, but has the right attitude, which is something I can stand by, and I want to see Gary Trent Jr. in the Raptors uniform long term, especially if he's going to be improving. So let me know your thoughts about Gary Trent Jr. potentially taking a leap next season, especially on the defensive end. But the next thing we're taking a look at is the regularly scheduled programming for the offseason, because the Atlanta Hawks continue to sort of insert their name into potential Pascal Siakam packages, and we don't know what's happening, right? We've heard reports, we've heard ups and downs. We're going to break down a lot of sort of quotes that have come out over the course of Summer League in this video. But basically, one thing that was sort of elaborated on by Mark Stein is that the screenshots did not appear. They didn't pop up. But basically, there's inherent skepticism about the Raptors when it comes to their willingness to trade. Oh, this is the correct report. My apologies. You can safely presume that the Dallas Mavericks are rooting for Atlanta to win the trade race for Pascal Siakam. They're also hoping such a trade features Hawks center Clint Capella as opposed to strictly DeAndre Hunter-centric deal. Capella has 2 seasons left on his current contract, valued at $43 million. The Raptors would appear to have little need for a pricey center after re-signing Jakob Poeltl this month for 4 years, basically $80 million. So a theoretical trade of Pascal Siakam to the Atlanta Hawks that features Clint Capella would open the door for Dallas to join the trade and pursue a separate deal to acquire Clint Capella. So basically what Mark Stein is coming out there and pitching, that the Raptors could acquire Clint Capella and the Mavericks could send us something back to make this deal a 3-team sort of triangle position. And personally, if we're not even getting DeAndre Hunter back in a potential trade with the Hawks, I don't know what we're getting. AJ Griffin, Kobe Buffkin are 2 players that are intriguing, are pretty, wouldn't be sad if they were Toronto Raptors by any means. But for Pascal Siakam, I've made it known that I'm a little bit frustrated that these are the types of packages we're sort of hearing out there in the news spheres and the reports. The Dallas Mavericks, there's no one really that intriguing sort of on their roster. I know they drafted a solid wing in this year's NBA draft, so maybe he could be a return there. But, Jalen Green, not with Jalen Green, goodness gracious. Mixing up the prospects there. There's not a lot of guys on Dallas. Tim Hardaway Jr. is a name that's been thrown out there in a bunch of potential deals. Dallas doesn't intrigue me. It's a 3rd team to potentially get more assets for Pascal Siakam, unless it's, draft capital. So, if they want to use us to acquire Clint Capella, we'll see what ends up happening on that front. But I'd be surprised if the Hawks would want to give up Clint Capella if they're acquiring Pascal Siakam. So this is something that confuses me a little bit. I get it that Onyeka Okongwu is a player that could slide into their center position and have him in the front court, but he's a bit undersized. You're not going to have Pascal run the center for you. So I don't know. We'll see what happens on that front, but we have a lot more reports to continue to flow in regarding the Toronto Raptors here at this point. And I highlighted earlier, I was reading out the wrong screenshot. Basically, there's an inherent skepticism around the league when it comes to the Raptors' willingness to trade Siakam or any of their frontline players. I nonetheless came away from Vegas with the distinct impression that the Toronto Raptors are still exploring another move, and maybe even 2. So Mark Stein is still the belief that a trade could end up going down. Mike Scotto came out and basically said the Raptors are still in the market for another point guard, to be a consistent backup on their current roster. I guess they don't have trust in the contingent of Malachi Flynn, Jeff Doughton Jr., and Marquise Noel after Summer League, even though Noel, we probably should do a whole video on Summer League, because Grady Dick and Noel had a pretty strong finish to Summer League, but I don't know. The Raptors are still in the market along those lines, and Pascal Siakam remains adamant that he will not sign an extension with the team after he's potentially traded. So that's everything that's going on. That's your sort of roundup. We still aren't sure what's actually going to be going down for this team, but we'll keep you updated on any information that ends up coming out surrounding the Toronto Raptors, because the Raptors Digest is what we do. So subscribe to the channel. We are extremely close to 29,000 subscribers. So if you made it this far, hopefully 70 people that haven't been subscribed and made it this far. If you're one of those, hit that subscribe button. Be on our journey, our quest to hit 29,000 subs. But you guys are the best. I'm signing out. Cheers.